The miracle doctor won't be a kept man, my heart belongs ashore. Chapter 731. Whoosh. Numerous journalists turned their gaze towards Ezaki. Now, the initiative was with Kiran York. He had demonstrated his strength, intimidating everyone present. Ezaki's gaze narrowed. He had not expected Kiran's strength to be so formidable. Kiran smiled at Ezaki. It's time for the next tunnel. As Ezaki was worrying about whom to choose, a voice came from behind him. I'll go. A man with a pale face stood up behind Ezaki. Be careful, Lord Red Cloud, Ezaki cautioned. Lord Red Cloud nodded and slowly walked towards Kiran, his gaze fixed on him. Kiran could tell that Lord Red Cloud was indeed stronger than Gengar, but still not his match. Although they were aroused by the Sunland reporters earlier, the crowd became silent as Lord Red Cloud approached, simply watching him approach. You are stronger than Blake Frost. Lord Red Cloud stopped and said slowly, one generation takes over from the previous one. Kiran stood with his hands behind his back. Our Dragonsland will only continue to rise. Well said. The people from Dragonsland praised him. Lord Red Cloud was calm. Kiran, your coming to Sunland is a good thing for our martial arts community, because over time I will become even stronger. Right? Kiran asked with a smile. Surprised by Kiran's quick understanding, Lord Red Cloud did not deny it but nodded truthfully. Exactly. Kiran chuckled. Mr. Lord Red Cloud, you are not my match. Go back now, and you might still save your life. Killing an enemy is not just about martial strength, Lord Red Cloud scoffed, pointing at his head. Sometimes it's more about this. Kiran just smiled. Do you remember the cut on Blake Frost's neck? Lord Red Cloud asked arrogantly. Your handiwork. Kiran's voice turned icy. Lord Red Cloud did not respond but instead produced 3 throwing knives from his hand, spinning blades. He looked up at the sky. Blake Frost was fortunate to die by my spinning blades. Why? Kiran asked coldly. Because he was the first person to face my spinning blades. Lord Red Cloud's eyes gleamed as he stared at Kiran. Today, you will be the second. This statement served as a declaration to Kiran and everyone present of his formidable skills. He rarely needed to use his ultimate move, the spinning blades. Kiran's mouth curved into a disdainful smile. Then you'll be the last one. What do you mean, the last one? Lord Red Cloud asked. The last ghost to be cut by the spinning blades. Kiran declared assertively. Ha! Undeterred. Lord Red Cloud sneered. My spinning blades have been used to kill people from Dragonsland since my master's time. Kiran's gaze turned icy and fierce, his killing intent surging. Lord Red Cloud arrogantly addressed the crowd. Years ago, when Dragonsland people came to assassinate in Sunland wielding the Imperial Dragon Sword, they died under my master's spinning blades. 20 years ago, Blake Frost came looking for the Imperial Dragon Sword and ultimately died under my spinning blades. Today, Kiran will become another ghost under my spinning blades. After Lord Red Cloud finished speaking, a brief silence fell over the crowd before many people in Sunland erupted, shouting, cut his throat, let him die miserably. Revenge for Gengar, glory to our ninja association. Eliminate Kiran, keep the Imperial Dragon Sword in Sunland. Encouraging and supportive shouts filled the air, and the atmosphere charged with intense energy. Kiran thought of Blake Frost's death, his final moment so indignant that he died with an unyielding gaze for 20 years. A surge of sorrowful passion filled Kiran. Enough talk, let's begin. As he spoke, he calmly faced Lord Red Cloud. Today is your day to die. Day to die. Lord Red Cloud laughed heartily. Kiran, you're naive. It's your day to die. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Lord Red Cloud suddenly stopped laughing and, in an unexpected move, threw 3 shining blades at Kiran, which caught him by surprise. Kiran, be careful, shouted the people from Dragonsland instinctively. Kiran didn't move but watched the approaching spinning blades. These blades were shaped like 5-pointed stars, each tip a curved, razor-sharp edge. The 3 blades attacked from different angles, one directly aimed at the forehead. This way, the person who was attacked would suffer attacks from 3 directions. Any hit from these blades would be fatal. Kiran's mind was filled with images of Blake Frost's eyes, full of defiance, discontent. Kiran's mind lingered on this thought. Observing, Kiran realized that although the blades were deadly, a warrior of Blake Frost's caliber should have been able to counter them, even at risk. Yet, The result was immediate death, highly unusual. Thinking of instant death, Kiran's mind flashed back to Lord Red Cloud's claim that the first master of the Imperial Dragon Path had been killed by his master with these blades. What kind of rotating blade could be so powerful? Kiran was skeptical. Yet, all these masters had died. Could it be? Clang, clang, clang. In the moment Kiran was deep in thought, the 3 flying blades had already emitted crisp sounds. Kiran snapped back to reality, looking directly at Lord Red Cloud. They should be called splintering spinning blades, not just spinning blades. What? Lord Red Cloud was taken aback, clearly not expecting this. Kiran raised his left hand, and a forceful strike hit all 3 blades precisely. Clang, clang, clang. The crisp sounds rang out again. The blades splintered and transformed into a swarm of smaller blades that shot toward Kiran like a burst of knife light. Disperse, Kiran shouted, his hand sweeping upward again. Ha ha, you fell for it. Lord Red Cloud shouted triumphantly. You mentioned splintering spinning blades, and I pretended to be shocked. Kiran was stunned to see smaller blades released from the center of each of the 3 spinning blades. Each blade had now produced 3 more, resulting in 9 blades from the original 3. At this moment, Kiran's earlier attack had exhausted his immediate capacity to react, making it too late to counter the onslaught. Like 9 open-jawed beasts, the 9 blades flew at Kiran, aiming to devour him. Kiran, be careful. Those from Dragonsland, witnessing this, instinctively shouted out in alarm, their faces filled with anxiety and concern. Tomorrow, next year, will be the anniversary of Kiran's death. Lord Red Cloud laughed as he turned away, hands behind his back, dismissing any further concern for Kiran. In his eyes, Kiran was already a dead man. Across the streaming platforms, tears streamed down the faces of countless viewers. The weapon that had claimed the lives of the first master of the Imperial Dragon Path and Blake Frost wasn't mere hype. Kiran was doomed. Many cried. Lily Yates cried. Chapter 732. Lord Red Cloud, so mighty. Ezaki exclaimed joyously. Lord Red Cloud, so mighty. The other Sunland ninjas echoed the praise. Those Sunland ninjas who had fought in the battle over 20 years ago all wore a proud, kingly air. They had one. Kiran was going to die. It was as if they had personally slain Kiran. The true power of the spinning blade was to split from 1 into 3, and 3 into 9. The crucial point was that these 9 were so close that even if one wanted to dodge, it was already too late. Thus, even if Kiran had the ability to move heaven and earth, he was destined to die this time, and it wouldn't be a pleasant death. Those who had seen the wounds on Blake Frost's body pictured those same blade injuries in their minds. Kiran was about to suffer the same fate. Kiran, no, Starly White, broadcasting live, covered her eyes, ignoring her fans' views, and cried out in agony. Bianca Campbell also shouted into the live camera, aren't you the master of your fate? Can't you control your destiny? Sis. Snow Xander's body went limp on the verge of fainting. Lillian Yanes, although also heartbroken, quickly reached out to support Snow. It's okay. Kiran won't die. Really. Snow quickly looked towards the live broadcast. She saw Kiran's familiar smile, his disdainful smirk, and the dominance in his eyes. It was all too familiar. Could it be? Blake Frost, close your eyes. Kiran suddenly shouted. His right hand, which had been still until now, lifted and a white light shot out. Then, the air filled with the sound of clinking. The spinning blades flying towards Kiran began to spin incessantly in the air, then changed direction, heading towards Lord Red Cloud. Ah! Lord Red Cloud gasped in surprise. Ezaki and everyone there gasped in shock. Lord Red Cloud, be careful. Nakamura shouted a warning. Lord Red Cloud, furious, eyes wide with rage, shouted, "Impossible." Before he could finish, he stopped yelling, his hand clutching his neck. His eyes bulged in disbelief. His mouth opened to speak, but no sound came out. Between his fingers, blood gushed out. 8 spinning blades were embedded in his body. Lord Red Cloud's body was like a leaky bag riddled with holes, continuously oozing blood. The situation beyond reversal. He fell backward. Thud. The sound of his body hitting the ground woke everyone from their shock. Kiran has won. The people from Dragonsland shouted excitedly. The Sunland people were in disbelief, staring at the twitching, bleeding body of Lord Red Cloud. In their dreams, they never imagined that Lord Red Cloud would be the one to die. In their eyes, it was supposed to be Kiran who died. But now, before them, it was Lord Red Cloud who lay dead. They didn't know how Kiran managed it, but he was still very much alive while Lord Red Cloud was dead. The most crushing blow was the spinning blade, their pride that they were so confident of. It had killed the first leader of the Imperial Dragon and Blake Frost, both famous and highly capable individuals, but had failed to kill Kiran. Kiran had made them doubt themselves and fear for their own lives. How did he do it? Everyone was astonished. Everyone was shocked. In fact, when the opponent first drew the spinning blade, Kiran prepared silver needles, wary of a sneak attack. Fortunately, everything had gone as expected. Lord Red Cloud had never imagined Kiran to be so cautious. He had become the final ghost of his own spinning blade. The last ghost. Next, Kiran's voice, calm as water, rang out again. Ah! The crowd exclaimed as if wakened from a dream, instinctively looking towards Ezaki. If the failure to kill Kiran earlier was due to Kiran's strength, then what could explain the spinning blade sneak attack failing to kill him? Everyone was frightened. This included the ninjas. Ezaki looked at Kiran coldly. What was even more terrifying was his calmness. They stared at Kiran, wanting to see the true nature of this man, but they were disappointed. Kiran was calm and collected, and it was impossible to tell. More importantly, Kiran's eyes were filled with disdain for them, as if killing them would be easy. The ninjas hesitated. This time, no one was willing to take the initiative to step forward. Nakamura had already lowered his head. Ezaki thought of the day they killed Blake Frost. If it had been a one-on-one fight, some of them would have died 20 years ago. In a one-on-one, their ninjas were at a disadvantage. They had killed Blake Frost through a mob attack. Was today's attempt to kill Kiran supposed to rely on a one-on-one fight? He hesitated, pondering, even starting to doubt. Nakamura, seeing Ezaki's intent, turned to Kiran and said coldly, "Kiran, you are indeed formidable. Even our two senior ninjas are no match for you. Do you want a mob attack?" Then, Kiran asked with a cold laugh. Exposed, Nakamura felt embarrassed. Maki-Abe, the reporter, not catching Nakamura's hint about a mob attack, scoffed, "Kiran, you overestimate yourself. To kill you, our Sunland ninjas would not stoop to a mob attack." Nakamura almost died of anger and wanted to rush over and strangle her. The other ninjas' gazes were also like sharp swords, filled with anger. Maki quickly covered her mouth, realizing her mistake. She wished she could slap herself, hastily retreating. The other Sunland reporters who were about to speak also swallowed their words, not daring to flatter anymore. However, their hearts were filled with humiliation and resentment, knowing that the Sunland ninjas had become fearful. Our Dragonsland's Kiran, taking on your Sunland ninjas alone, is already heroic enough. You even considered a mob attack. Truly shameless. Someone from Dragonsland shouted indignantly. We never thought about a mob attack. Nakamura, embarrassed, could only tough it out. The other ninjas also stood firm, looking at Kiran to show they were unafraid. But everyone inside was cursing Maki-Abe. If not for her meddling, Kiran might have agreed to a mob attack. If it's one-on-one, who's next then? Kiran sneered, looking at the pretentious Nakamura and his ninjas. Chapter 733. Nakamura and others' mouths twitched repeatedly, but ultimately no one spoke, all turning their gazes towards Ezaki. Ezaki's face was dark, aware that no one was willing to step forward voluntarily anymore. After all, when facing life and death, no one is fearless. Kiran had already shaken the Ninja Association to its core. He turned to look at a short man beside him, about to speak an order. "I need to use the bathroom," the man said, and quickly dashed out of the crowd. Ezaki felt like he was left hanging, his eyes filled with surprise and helplessness. The others also looked down, none willing to be the next to die. The atmosphere at the scene was oppressively silent. Ezaki's mouth twitched with anger. "Is no one else running off to pee?" Kiran asked with a light chuckle, looking at them. Although they felt humiliated and wanted to escape, they held back. Kiran looked coldly at Ezaki. "It seems none of your ninjas are willing to step forward voluntarily." Ezaki's face went through a rapid change of expression. He turned back to look at the crowd and said in a deep voice, "Who will make a move?" Everyone lowered their heads immediately, none spoke, and certainly no one stepped forward. This made the Sunland journalists and people feel extremely humiliated. Even the noisy Sunland netizens who still believed someone could kill Kiran in the duel despite the deaths of Gangoa and Lord Red Cloud went silent. Now, there was only a complete, humiliating silence. The fear of Kiran had become a reality. If not for Maki Abe, they might have been able to initiate a group attack, but now they could not. And it was simply embarrassing. Since no one is coming forward, then I'll come forward myself, Kiran declared. Looking at the people of Sunland and Dragonsland, I have a life and death agreement with them. My life and their lives all depended on fate. But here, there's no law. Kiran's voice dropped, and he looked proudly at the people of Sunland. The Sunland people remained silent, aware of Kiran's disgust. The Dragonsland people understood the implication and immediately shouted, "We can testify that you all signed a life and death agreement. Now, it's one against a group. The people of Sunland have never played fair. Be cautious." The Dragonsland people, worried about the Sunland people's lack of shame and integrity, loudly supported Kiran. Kiran raised his hand, signaling for silence. The scene quieted down, and Kiran looked at Ezaki. "President Ezaki, are you the first to make a move, or should I just start making my way through?" Ezeki's face was as black as ink, dripping with gloom. He did not expect Kiran to be so arrogantly formidable, nor did he anticipate that Kiran would scare his people so much. His heart filled with annoyance and depression, and he could only force himself to say, "Kiran, come on then. We are not afraid of you." After he spoke, he did not advance but instead looked at the crowd. "Disperse." "Hi," the crowd shouted in unison, quickly scattering. Kiran immediately saw that they were going to resort to a group attack. "Let's get going." Fearlessly, Kiran shouted and leaped forward, attacking a ninja before him. The ninja hadn't even reacted before he saw a hand gripping his neck. Ah! The crisp sound of breaking bones accompanied his scream. His body flew and smashed into other ninjas. Those who were too slow to dodge were directly hit. More screams followed their bones breaking. The faces of Ezaki and others changed drastically. Was Kiran truly unleashing a massacre? This made them a bit nervous but also more determined to kill Kiran. Ezaki shouted in Sunlandese to someone in the distance to cut the live broadcast. Before the journalists could react, their broadcasting equipment was smashed. Those who had smashed the equipment rushed toward the Dragonsland people, intending to destroy their broadcasting equipment too. Kiran returned, blocking those people. "They are playing underhanded tricks." The Dragonsland people realized the opponent's intentions and shouted angrily. The Sunland people at the scene instantly understood and retreated to the side. Maki Abe, knowing she had repeatedly made foolish mistakes, now could not continue to be foolish. So she shouted, "Kiran is killing the innocent. He deserves to die." Other Sunland people also saw the danger of a duel with the Ninja Association and wanted to initiate a group attack, shouting in unison, "Let's kill Kiran together." Ezaki, hearing this, was overjoyed and looked towards Kiran. "Kiran, you've incited public outrage. Don't blame us now. Do you want to play the victim now?" The people of Dragonsland shouted angrily, pulling out their phones and aiming their cameras at Ezaki and his people. Ezaki didn't care. In his view, what could a few videos from the Dragonsland people do as long as they killed Kiran? They could still be destroyed. Unfazed, he commanded the ninjas, "Kill Kiran together." "Hi!" The previously demoralized ninjas surged in confidence as they charged at Kiran together. "Mr. Kiran, please run. We will expose this incident." Some Dragonsland people shouted worriedly. Kiran, moved by their concern, stood tall and proclaimed, "Men of Dragonsland must be strong." With that, he faced the onslaught of Sunland ninjas head on. Thump! He knocked down one ninja with one punch and sent the others tumbling. Thump! Another kick lifted another ninja into the air, crashing into a group and injuring many. Kiran was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep, launching a ferocious assault on the ninjas. However, as the ninjas began their group attack, they became fearless, charging forward one after another. Initially, Kiran was composed, but as time passed, and the ninjas kept coming relentlessly, not fearing death, even Kiran began to sweat. If it were mere martial artists, Kiran would have no fear, but ninjas were different. They often used techniques of disappearance. This resulted in Kiran's attackers suddenly vanishing from sight. Under these circumstances, Kiran had to attack while maintaining high alertness to defend himself and prevent sneak attacks. Despite his efforts, he was not completely unscathed. The sound of a blade slicing through flesh came as Kiran's left forearm was slashed, blood spraying. Kiran winced in pain but made no sound. The people of Dragonsland at the scene became furious. "Mr. Kiran, please get out of there. You, Sunland people, are utterly shameless. You have no integrity at all. Winning by mobbing is dishonorable." Facing the anger of the Dragonsland people, the Sunland people were not ashamed but delighted to see Kiran in distress. "Kill Kiran. The victor is king. Our Sunland ninjas are supremely powerful." Both sides shouted at each other, arguing vehemently. The Sunland people took shamelessness to an extreme. The Dragonsland people were filled with nervous concern and sympathy. Kiran and the ninjas were fighting frenziedly. Kiran knew he had to break out, or he would surely die. The ninjas knew their reputation would be forever tarnished if Kiran did not die. Neither side had a way out. A battle to the death was inevitable. The ninjas were going crazy. Kiran was enraged. The entire scene was splattered with blood, screams echoing, stirring the blood of everyone watching. Yet, as time went on, Kiran's morale visibly weakened. Although the Sunland ninjas suffered many losses, a significant number remained, and their momentum grew stronger. Kiran was horrified. Two fists were unable to defeat four hands. Was he destined to become the second Blake Frost? Chapter 734. This world was very cruel in the face of life and death. The outrage of Dragonsland's people seemed futile against the shamelessness of Sunland's people. They wanted to shield Kiran and even die for him, but it was in vain. They tried to leave with evidence to expose the deceit of Sunland's people only to find all paths from the mountain sealed, with thorough checks at every exit. The result, all mobile phones were confiscated. Feeling helpless and desperate, many from Dragonsland could only watch Kiran's bleeding wounds and weep. In this harsh world, no one pities the weak. History is written by the victors. The people of Sunland were in a frenzy, and their ninjas were crazed, wanting nothing more than to kill Kiran by any means necessary. Yet, what Sunland's people didn't expect was their ultimate disgrace and failure. Members of Foxgate had set up numerous live broadcasting devices, using satellites from Dragonsland to stream everything live. The disgrace of the Sunland Ninja Association was now visible to the world. At this moment, countless people from Dragonsland, and even other nations, cursed Sunland's shamelessness online, disgusted with the dishonorable Sunland ninjas. However, none of this could alleviate Kiran's immediate peril. Lillian wept profusely. Snow cried until she could barely breathe, and eventually, Lillian had to use a pressure point technique to make her faint. Kiran continued to fight the ninjas on Mount Futu. Ninjas fell, but Kiran's injuries worsened. Thump! Finally, Kiran couldn't hold on any longer and knelt on one knee. "Kiran has knelt," Makiev shouted excitedly. "Kiran has knelt," echoed the other people from Sunland. "We fight now," roared the people of Dragonsland, ready to rush forward and save Kiran at the cost of their own lives. Lillian made a call. "If Kiran dies, blow up Mount Futo and let all these ninjas be buried with him." "Rest assured, leader," replied the disciple of Foxgate, tears streaming down his face. "It's not that they won't help Kiran, but the light of fireflies was useless here." "Kiran, you are the man of my life," Lillian murmured as she watched the live feed. "Kiran, what will I do if you die? If you kill Kiran, I will activate his goo poison and kill you all," cried Yvonne Quinn through her tears, her gaze unwavering. Serena Zimmerman cried out, "Master is still alive. Come back, Kiran, and I'll tell you." Lindsay Ludwig pressed a dagger against her chest. "Kiran, if you live, I live. If you die, I die." Tears of true love rolled down her mature, beautiful face. Weak though they were, the people of Dragonsland charged forward, prepared to protect Kiran with their lives. "Back down," Kiran shouted, deeply moved. The people of Dragonsland stopped, shocked. Kiran struggled to stand, trembling, and faced Ezaki. "Let these people of Dragonsland go." "Mr. Kiran, we won't leave," they shouted back. "Go, I'm fine." Kiran turned to them, his eyes resolute. "As a man of Dragonsland, even in death, I am mighty. This is a life and death pact." "Mr. Kiran." The people of Dragonsland knelt, their voices trembling. "Go," Kiran shouted again. "We're leaving," someone said, wiping away tears. They also realized that staying meant dying in vain, and that the shame of Sunland couldn't be broadcast if they stayed. In the past, they hadn't known about the heroic deeds of Blake Frost. However, today, They had witnessed Kiran's true heroism. Such a hero deserved their respect and to have his story sung, not to die in vain. Ezaki was conflicted. He knew the consequences of letting these people go, but couldn't kill them all. Let them go, he shouted down the mountain. Maki-Abe wanted to protest but didn't dare. The people of Dragonsland looked to Kiran. He smiled faintly. Go on, Mr. Kiran. They cried out in tears. I bear no family grudge, no national hatred with the Sunland Ninja Association. It's just a martial arts contest. Winning and losing is normal, Kiran told them. The hearts of the people of Dragonsland trembled violently again, fearing they'd see Kiran preserved in formalin and forgotten. Mr. Kiran is a hero, someone shouted. Mr. Kiran is a hero. The people of Dragonsland cried in unison. They turned and left, tears flowing, heading down the mountain. Unable to assist Kiran, their hearts were filled with regret. But they would remember Kiran, remember this enmity. Countless people from Dragonsland felt sorrow online, knowing this battle might be Kiran's last. Not because Kiran wasn't strong, but because the people of Sunland were disgraceful. A man challenging an association was already heroic. The Sunland Ninja Association's group attack was utterly shameful. Mount Futu, a spiritual symbol of Sunland, was the stage for this battle of honor. Ezaki also bore the dignity of Sunland. If Kiran lived, Sunland's dignity would be lost. Kiran had to die. He had to die horribly. At the duel site on Mount Futu, only Kiran remained, his body soaked with blood and trembling. If anyone stayed with Kiran, it was the song Man Should Be Self-Reliant playing in his mind, filling him with the strength to stand again despite his weakness. I am a man who must be strong. Marching forward, the pillar and the hero, Kiran muttered the lyrics, walking towards Ezaki. Kill him, shouted Maki-Abe. The Sunland ninjas, their blood boiling, swarmed toward Kiran. Though Kiran was weakened, his mind conjured the image of playing the joyful Odyssey on the harp. His hands moved as if playing the harp, instinctively waving as he advanced. His body took hits, but he kept moving forward, ninjas falling continuously. Watching this scene, Lillian felt a surge of excitement. So, the joyful Odyssey was a martial art after all. Unfortunately, Kiran hadn't cultivated it to a deeper level. Lillian went to her harp and began to play the joyful Odyssey. Chapter 735. At the first level, love flows freely. At the second, dreams prove fleeting. At the third, worldly emotions weigh heavily. At the fourth, resentments resolve and end. At the fifth, no more hatred remains, be at peace. Lillian swiftly played up to the fifth level on her harp, feeling a profound shift within herself, especially upon seeing Kiran bravely advancing. Her fingers naturally began to play the sixth level of the joyful Odyssey Freedom. As the sound of the harp rose, waves of emotion surged within her as if all the grudges of the world were dissipating into smoke, leaving only love to illuminate everything. She suppressed a whisper, Kiran, I love you. On the other side, Kiran was merely waiting for the moment of his death. Then he seemed to sense Lillian's declaration, Kiran, I love you, and it felt like a force had risen within him. He experienced an immense surge of energy. Seeing Kiran's reaction, Lillian thought of their telepathic connection through the love spell. She glimpsed a sliver of hope and began rapidly strumming the strings, playing the joyful Odyssey. Like a seed of hope, the power of Lillian's love began to transform into strength within Kiran's heart. His willpower seemed to grow stronger as he continued to move forward. Nakamura and the other ninjas thought Kiran would soon be defeated, but he kept advancing. Damn it, Nakamura exclaimed, leaping forward with a concealed weapon. Kiran died. He launched a flurry of hidden weapons at Kiran. Seeing Nakamura, the deceitful figure, Kiran's urge to kill surged. He took a deep breath, dodged most of the hidden weapons, and confronted Nakamura up close. Nakamura, panicked, tried to retreat. Die, Kiran shouted, and he burst Nakamura's chest with a powerful punch. Nakamura screamed terribly as he was thrown backward, blood spurting from his mouth. With a thud, he fell to the ground, twitched twice, and died. The surrounding ninjas were stunned, not expecting such a powerful attack from Kiran. He's at his last stand, Ezaki shouted, trying to boost morale. Kill him. Several elite ninjas appeared, finally taking action. A tremendous force seemed to surge towards Kiran like a mighty wave was crashing down on him. Although the telepathic power of the joyful Odyssey resonated with him, it was minuscule compared to the brute force he faced. His body flew through the air and violently smashed to the ground. Kiran, Lillian cried out as the strings of her harp snapped. Kiran. Lillian's face turned pale, and she collapsed weakly to the ground. Countless viewers watching the live stream covered their eyes, unable to watch further. Kiran died. The elite ninjas who had joined forces shouted as they charged him, their hands swirling with endless attacks. Kiran lay on the ground, powerless to resist. He struggled to open his eyes, seeing the clear, cloudless sky, which seemed so distant. "Mom, Dad, I can't avenge you," he murmured. "In the face of national tragedy, I die without regrets. I am a man of Dragonsland." Kiran chanted with all his might, his eyes tightly shut, commanding the heavens. The path is bright. The dragon soars across the seas. He felt the spirit of the first master of Imperial Dragon and Blake Frost within him. As a citizen of Dragonsland, he was determined to fight for the honor of his country. People from Dragonsland Online, filled with grief, covered their eyes, whispering the same mantra, commanding the heavens. The path is bright. The dragon soars across the seas. Only when there was a country could there be a home, a sentiment deeply felt by many. Yet, none of this stopped the ninjas' determination to kill Kiran, nor did it halt their advancing force. Their attacks drew nearer, and Kiran's death loomed closer. Ezaki stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes filled with disdainful mockery and triumph. "Kiran, have a good journey," he jeered with countless others from Sunland. "Kiran, have a good journey." The elite ninjas also shouted excitedly, believing they would soon be heroes for killing Kiran. Buzz. Suddenly, the entire Mount Futu seemed to emit a deep hum, startling the elite ninjas and halting their attacks momentarily. Crack, crack. A series of snapping sounds followed. Before they could react, some ninjas lost their heads, others were cut in half, and limbs were severed. Terrified screams filled the air. The onlookers from Sunland were shocked to see a black sword, now turned red, flying autonomously, slaughtering countless ninjas before finally landing beside Kiran. The crowd was stunned. What just happened? Exhausted and expecting death, Kiran felt the sword's weight but lacked the strength to lift it. Then, an ancient voice echoed in his ears, commanding the heavens. "The path is bright. The dragon soars across the seas." Startled, Kiran strained to identify the source and saw it was coming from the sword. "We have a successor for Dragonsland," the voice from the sword proclaimed. "Who are you?" Kiran asked, his voice filled with confusion. "I am Axel Yanes, the first master of Imperial Dragon. The harp piece you resonated with, the joyful odyssey, and the telepathic connection it created has awakened the sword spirit I left in this Imperial Dragon sword." Sword spirit? Kiran was astonished. Yes, Imperial Dragon sword possesses a spirit. In times of national crisis, I was granted this sword to protect our nation. As I died fighting against the forces of Sunland, I infused my soul into the sword, sealing it so it wouldn't fall into enemy hands. Destruction. Kiran saw clarification. Exactly. You visited the dragon's vein. You must have felt the sword's connection to it. The sword isn't merely a weapon. It bears the fate and ethos of our nation. Fate and ethos of our nation, Kiran murmured, trying to grasp the full meaning. The universal way is interconnected. The natural laws prevail. You will understand this in time, the voice assured him. What should I do now? Kiran inquired, focusing intently. My awakening as the sword spirit is to help you through this ordeal. You must return the Imperial Dragon's sword to our homeland. I can then dissipate completely, finally resting in peace. You. Kiran's voice trailed off. Commanding the heavens, the path is bright. The dragon soars across the seas. This is the creed of Imperial Dragon, the foundation of our nation. I hope Imperial Dragon will thrive under your leadership, safeguarding our home and country. I am not of Imperial Dragon, Kiran protested. You are a man of Dragonsland. Every Dragonslander is part of Imperial Dragon. Our mission is to protect our country. The sword spirit corrected him. Kiran woke up from his days. Every citizen is responsible for their nation. Kill him. Ezaki charged towards Kiran, ready to end it. Chapter 736. Buzz. The Imperial Dragon sword let out a sound like a dragon's roar, then erupted in a brilliant red light, shielding Kiran in the center. Suddenly, Kiran felt an infinite power surge into his body filled with strength. He opened his eyes, then he sat up, and finally, he stood up. Now, the Imperial Dragon sword was in his hand. Ezaki, who had rushed over, did not expect Kiran to suddenly stand. He tried to abort his attack, but it was too late. Kiran raised the Imperial Dragon's sword in his hand and shouted resolutely, "Command in the heavens, the path is bright, and the dragon soars across the seas. The rise and fall of the land are every man's responsibility. Dragonsland, you are beneath those who act petty and low." Buzz, buzz, buzz. As if responding with the soul, the Imperial Dragon sword emitted a series of dragon-like roar. Kiran, facing Ezaki's ferocious attack, swung the Imperial Dragon sword. Swoosh! With the flash of red light, Ezaki was cut into two in the air. Ah! Ezaki let out a blood-curdling scream. The ninjas behind him were also caught in the aftershock of the Imperial Dragon sword's attack, screaming in agony and dying on the spot. Kiran had slain Ezaki with a single strike. The scene shocked and frightened the people of Sunland. The people of Dragonsland, who had been in despair, were all astonished. They hadn't expected Kiran to stand up, nor had they expected the Imperial Dragon sword to fly into his hands on his own. Now, Kiran, alone with his sword, stood firm, radiating an aura even stronger than before he had been injured. Kiran seemed like an eternal spirit, indomitable. The Imperial Dragon sword in Kiran's hand turned even redder, the blade and hilts jade integrating into one. Kiran's entire being seemed to turn a shocking, awe-inspiring red. This shade of red was like their national flag, bright red, like the blood of countless ancestors. Bright red, beautifully red, blindingly red, righteously red. The ninjas of Sunland were now terrified. Their leader, Ezaki, was dead, slain by a single sword stroke. Their gaze towards Kiran was one of fear and bewilderment, unsure of what to do. At this moment, Kiran was like a deity to them, a deity they looked up to. "Shall we continue the fight?" Kiran addressed the gathered Ninja Association members. Everyone was silent. "Fight, and we continue. Yield, and you admit defeat." Kiran's gaze was piercing as he surveyed the crowd. The crowd exchanged looks, no one daring to decide. Kiran had just killed many of them, even while he himself was severely injured. Now, armed with the Imperial Dragon sword and having killed Ezaki, they truly dared not continue. Kiran's gaze swept across the silent crowd. No one will speak. The crowd remained silent. Kiran walked towards the ninja. Seeing Kiran approach, the ninja, paralyzed with fear, attempted to back away but found his legs gave out, unable to move. Finally, the ninja broke down emotionally and knelt before him. "No more fighting. I yield." His declaration set off a domino effect. Thump, thump, thump. The other ninjas all knelt before Kiran, including the higher-ranked ones. They clearly understood that their lives would be forfeit if they did not kneel now. "We yield," the ninjas pleaded to Kiran. "Kiran has won." The people of Dragonsland watching the broadcast finally breathed a sigh of relief, shouting excitedly. The numerous people of Sunland, their arrogance replaced by despair, felt a deep, heartfelt despair. They had lost. Not just a loss, but a loss without dignity. Kiran had won. He won with dignity. At that moment, Kiran, unaware there was still a live broadcast, tapped a ninja on the shoulder with the Imperial Dragon sword. Ah! Thinking he was about to be killed, the ninja screamed in terror. Kiran did not kill him, but instead said, "You do not kneel before me." The ninja looked at Kiran in confusion. "You kneel before the Imperial Dragon sword." The ninja's mouth twitched, but he dared not speak. The Imperial Dragon sword represents the dragon path. The dragon path rule over all, the path of righteousness. The dragon soars across the seas. Kiran surveyed the kneeling ninjas. "You kneel to justice, to peace." Hearing this, the ninjas lowered their heads, many showing shame on their faces. "Justice will always overcome evil." Kiran addressed the reporters. "A country that lacks the courage to face justice, that lacks a bottom line, will never be strong. Evil does not suppress the righteous." Kiran's words hung in the air. He placed the Imperial Dragon sword back in his sheath and walked away with pride. Evil does not suppress the righteous. This phrase lingered long in the hearts of those present. Across the internet and throughout Dragonsland, countless people also posted these words: "Justice will ultimately triumph over evil." Sparing the ninjas moved everyone, shocking all observers. "You kneel to justice, to peace." This statement resonated deeply with many in Sunland, but it also enraged countless others. Kiran, however, paid them no heed. He descended from Mount Futu, going down to where the Dragonslanders he had persuaded to leave earlier were still watching. They had followed the broadcast and knew of Kiran's victory. Seeing Kiran, the crowd spontaneously began singing My Motherland and Me. The song spread through the internet, across Dragonsland, echoing through streets and alleys. A nation needed heroes, and Aaron needed heroes. It is these heroes that made a country grow stronger. There were many heroes, and Kiran was one of them. Thinking of Axel Yanes' spirit dispersing, Kiran felt profound respect. Facing the crowd, he had no words, only a calm smile and genuine emotions. From the crowd, a shout arose. Bid farewell to the hero, Kiran. Bid farewell to the hero, Kiran. The shout echoed around Mount Futu. Beep, beep, beep. A neat line of car horns sounded. The door of the foremost red sedan opened, inviting Kiran to enter. Kiran raised the Imperial Dragon sword sheath above his head as if holding the most precious treasure in the world. Welcome the hero of Dragonsland home. The people of Dragonsland at the scene instantly understood, recalling those who had gone forth in times of national crisis, falling on their knees. Welcome the hero of Dragonsland home. Welcome the hero of Dragonsland home. Welcome the hero of Dragonsland home. The cries rose one after another. Welcome the hero of Dragonsland home. Countless people shouted this phrase across the entire network and across all of Dragonsland. Those nameless people were the true heroes. Those who selflessly sacrificed were the true heroes. The strength of Dragonsland was written in the chapters by its heroes. The heroes of Dragonsland have touched everyone. The shameless people of Sunland, however, were even more angered. At Sunland Airport, obstructions were already in place to prevent Kiran from returning home. Chapter 737. The head of the Sunland Martial Arts Association, Okajima, looked grim. His beady eyes darted around, and he fidgeted uncomfortably in his suit as if it were covered in thorns. The phone in his hand was heated up like a hot potato and nearly out of battery. To him, the battle between the Sunland Ninja Association and Kiran was supposed to be an assured victory, an easy task to eliminate Kiran. To ensure this, he had reminded Ezaki that Kiran must be killed and had set up various measures to prevent the fight from being broadcasted, aiming to end Kiran's life out of the public eye. However, not only did the whole ordeal get broadcasted, but their collective effort failed to take down Kiran. Sunland's reputation was thoroughly tarnished, and its dignity lost. With the Imperial Dragon sword reclaimed, Sunland had utterly lost. Now branded a villain by many, Okajima was desperate to stop Kiran from returning to Dragonsland, so he arranged the entire airport setup accordingly. As car horns beeped, a line of Dragonsland's cars appeared at the airport. Sunland had a booming car industry that boasted global sales. The appearance of domestically produced cars from Dragonsland was unmistakably conspicuous. Okajima watched the cars approach and quickly made a phone call that was promptly answered. Kiran has arrived, he reported. I know, the person on the other end responded before hanging up. As the cars halted, Kiran and his group hadn't yet alighted when they found themselves surrounded by a large contingent of Sunland police. Kiran sat inside the car with a cold smirk typical of shameless Sunland. What is going on here? A Dragonsland man exited the car and inquired. We suspect there's a murderer in your vehicle. We need to arrest him, the leading policeman declared. A murderer? The man from Dragonsland was curious but sensed something was off. Kiran stepped out of the car. Holding the Imperial Dragon sword and covered in blood, Kiran stood out starkly. Arrest him? The lead policeman shouted as the other officers aimed their guns at Kiran, their eyes filled with caution and anger. Don't move, the policemen yelled with their guns cocked. What are you doing? Dragonsland people shielded Kiran and glowered at the police. He is covered in blood. We suspect he's a murderer and need to take him in for questioning, the lead policeman said sinisterly. I did kill. Kiran responded calmly to the lead policeman. That's good to hear, the policeman said with relief. I killed people from the Sunland Ninja Association, Kiran reminded them. No matter who it was, murder is murder, the lead policeman loudly proclaimed. We have a life and death agreement. They were trying to kill me too, Kiran argued. We don't care. All we see is that you're a murderer. The lead policeman twisted the facts. You are deliberately distorting the facts, a man from Dragonsland angrily said. Let's sort it out back at the station, the policeman coldly warned. Society does not permit murder. It was your Sunland Ninja Association who attempted murder first, the man from Dragonsland countered. We don't know about that, The lead policeman said dismissively and ordered his men. Take him away. Yes, sir, the other policeman responded, ready to apprehend Kiran. We have a life and death agreement, Kiran said with a cold laugh, emphasizing again. I don't care, and I don't believe you. The lead policeman was focused only on completing his task. You people from Sunland are truly shameless. The Dragonsland people were furious. Damn it. The policeman exploded in anger as the other officers pointed their guns at the Dragonsland people. The Dragonsland crowd was undaunted. We haven't broken any laws. Are you really going to commit murder? Tension was high at the scene. If you don't believe me, you can ask the Ninja Association. You can ask any of the Sunland reporters who were at Mount Futu, Kiran suggested. There is no life and death agreement. I can testify. Maki Abe joined in, having just arrived and shouting loudly. Evidence. The lead policeman demanded of Kiran. Your shamelessness is beyond words, Kiran scoffed. Maki crossed her arms before her, defiantly looking at Kiran. Even if you had wings, you couldn't escape Sunland today. She arrogantly extended her hand towards Kiran. Where's your life and death agreement? Show us. She had seen Kiran's agreement get soaked in blood and destroyed during the fight, so she was confident in her assertion. Kiran knew it was no longer with him. There's no agreement. You're lying and can't deceive us. The lead policeman was confident. The life and death agreement is right here. Suddenly, a voice in broken Dragonsland language came from the crowd. Everyone looked to see a beautiful woman in black approaching. It was Aoki Kastner, blushing as she ran over holding a document. This is the life and death agreement signed between President Ezaki and Mr. Kiran, Aoki stated. Her face flushed as she blinked her monolith eyes at Kiran, then turned to the lead policeman. The policeman was furious, feeling undermined. Maki glared at Aoki, shouting, What nonsense are you spouting? Aoki shook her head. I'm not spouting nonsense. Mr. Kiran did indeed sign a life and death agreement with President Ezaki, and in the end, Mr. Kiran spared our Sunland ninjas. We conceded. Maki was so angry she was at a loss for words. Kiran nodded at Aoki, gratefully acknowledging her help. Aoki's face was flushed with shyness yet filled with happiness, feeling she had truly aided Kiran. The lead policeman, frustrated, glanced at Okajima outside the crowd. Okajima was equally dismayed that someone from the Sunland Ninja Association had helped Kiran. Finally, he signaled to the lead policeman to give up. He knew that with so many Dragonsland people and the event being broadcast live, any forceful action was now futile. This attempt at obstruction was merely an irritation. If they could have detained Kiran and taken the Imperial Dragon Sword, they would have. If not, they'd resort to other measures. The lead policeman waved his hand to his men, withdraw. With that, the officers retreated. Maki stared at Kiran venomously, seething with anger. Mr. Kiran, please proceed, the Dragonsland people said loudly, reveling in their vindication. Kiran nodded and started walking towards the terminal. At that moment, another group of police officers arrived, blocking Kiran's way. You cannot enter the airport, they stated. Why not? The Dragonsland people demanded. He's carrying a weapon. He cannot board the plane, one officer declared, unless it's checked in. Hearing the words checked in, the Dragonsland people were on alert. Knowing the other side had ill intentions, they looked to Kiran, somewhat helpless, as it was clear that the opposition did not want the Imperial Dragon Sword to leave. The standoff at the scene intensified. Just then, another round of car horns sounded. Chapter 738. The car stopped, and Florence Nash got out. She approached the police and presented her credentials. I'm an embassy staff member from the Dragonsland government. Here are my credentials. The police glanced at her ID and handed it back to her. Sorry, our airport has its rules. No weapons are allowed on flights unless they are checked in. Florence frowned. We have chartered a flight. That doesn't matter. The police remained adamant. Florence's expression darkened significantly. No one, no matter who they are, is allowed to bring weapons into the airport unless they check them in, the officer insisted firmly. Kiran had already seen through their intentions. They were determined to keep the Imperial Dragon Sword there. He looked at Florence. I won't go. Florence slightly furrowed her brow, realizing the situation was unchangeable, and nodded. Get back in the car. Kiran turned and followed Florence back to her vehicle. Okajima watched as Kiran, still holding the Imperial Dragon Sword, got into Florence's car. Although he was somewhat relieved that both the man and the sword were still in Sunland, he began arranging increased security checks at the airport and ports while trailing Kiran. Kiran rode with Florence back to the city. During the drive, Florence broke the silence. "Mr. Kiran, you are a hero." "Not me, it's these people," Kiran responded, looking out at the Dragonsland citizens who had stayed with him. "You have a broad and profound spirit, Florence commended. A single person can gather immense strength. I believe that Dragonsland will become even stronger in the future," Kiran said, his voice laden with emotion. "Mr. Kiran, as far as what we can do for you, I was only able to help coordinate up to this point," Florence apologized. Kiran nodded, not asking why. Florence seemed uncomfortable this time. "Although no one from Dragonsland stood up, everyone hoped for your victory and that you would bring the Imperial Dragon Sword back." "I understand," Kiran murmured as he looked out the window. Mountains and rivers remain the same, but time has its regrets. Florence was silent, knowing some issues were best handled at the civilian level, such as the retrieval of the Imperial Dragon Sword. After a moment, she continued, "Mr. Kiran, for now, all you can do is find a place to rest." "It's fine," Kiran responded with a smile. "I'll try to contact others and find a way for you to leave Sunland," Florence said. "Thank you." "I should be thanking you," Florence concluded, then started making phone calls. She eventually dropped Kiran off at the Dragonsland Chamber of Commerce in Sunland. When Kiran arrived, a red carpet had already been laid out, and many Dragonsland citizens were there to welcome him. Upon seeing everyone, they cheered, "Welcome back, Dragonsland hero." Kiran was moved and nodded in thanks. An elderly man in traditional attire came forward briskly despite his age, his face flushed with health. "Mr. Kiran, thank you." "Chairman Clegg, Mr. Kiran needs to rest here for a while. Once I have arranged everything, I will come to pick him up," Florence informed. "Don't worry. We will ensure Mr. Kiran's safety," Chairman Clegg promptly assured. After a few words with Kiran, Florence left to help arrange his departure. "Mr. Kiran, please come inside to refresh yourself," Chairman Clegg invited respectfully. "Thank you, Chairman Clegg," Kiran responded, carrying the Imperial Dragon Sword inside. The people watched the hero and respected the Imperial Dragon Sword with joy and reverence. Kiran entered a luxurious suite prepared with fresh clothes. "Mr. Kiran, please take a bath first. We will wait outside," Chairman Clegg said politely. "Thank you for your efforts, Chairman Clegg," Kiran acknowledged. "To see Dragonsland reclaim the Imperial Dragon Sword in my lifetime, I would die content," Chairman Clegg suddenly said, his eyes welling up with tears. Kiran nodded solemnly, touched. "I've left the room." When Kiran undressed, he saw countless wounds on his body. They hurt, but he endured them. After quickly showering, he applied his own medicines to the wounds, which helped significantly, though they had not yet scabbed over. He sat in the room to meditate and heal, opting not to go out. About an hour later, a commotion at the door broke his meditation. He heard Chairman Clegg's angry attempts to stop someone and the sounds of people in pain. Kiran quickly got dressed and prepared to go outside. The door burst open, and a young man entered. "Young Master Kiran, please come with me quickly." Kiran was taken aback by his words. "My name is Elliot. I work for sect leader Yanes of the Foxgate. Right now, the Sunland Martial Arts Association has rallied the public here to cause trouble, trying to seize the Imperial Dragon's sword in the chaos." "The Sunland Martial Arts Association?" Kiran questioned. Elliot nodded. "Yes, your ordeal at the airport, all the obstructions, were their doings, all to keep the Imperial Dragon Sword." Kiran's eyes flashed with anger. Elliot continued, "The sword, the nation wants to retrieve it, but it cannot act directly for many reasons. The Dragonsland Martial Arts Association is riddled with internal factions, and nobody takes charge. Imperial Dragon is also fragmented. No one has come searching for the sword, which is why it has not been retrieved until now." Pausing, Elliot added, "Retrieving the Imperial Dragon Sword has always been a mission for our Foxgate. It is said that our previous sect leader's last words were about reclaiming the Imperial Dragon Sword." Kiran, touched by these words, connected the dots. His mother, Zara Yanes, had died without closure. Now, the current sect leader of Foxgate is Lillian Yanes. Could Axel Yanes be related to him? As he pondered, the noise outside grew louder. "Young Master Kiran, we need to leave now," Elliot urged anxiously. Kiran set aside his reflections, not wanting to cause more trouble for the Chamber of Commerce. He nodded, took the Imperial Dragon sword, and followed Elliot out through the back. Outside, a car was waiting. Kiran and Elliot got in quickly. Elliot drove off, but soon, vehicles started converging on them from all directions. Elliot's expression turned tense. He pulled out his phone, dialed a number, and shouted into the phone, "Immediate cover needed for young Master Kiran to get out." "Understood," came the response. As Kiran wondered about the unfolding events, more than a dozen motorcycles suddenly surged out, charging towards the encircling cars. "Young Master Kiran, don't worry," Elliot said with a determined smile, stepping on the accelerator and speeding away. Behind them came sounds of harsh collisions. Kiran turned and saw bodies and blood flying in the air. Elliot's eyes were moist as he said, "We never intended to live to return to Dragonsland." Kiran closed his eyes slowly, his heart stirred by the strong sense of duty and sacrifice around him. People's devotion to their country was the foundation of a nation's strength. "Dragonsland will surely grow stronger," Kiran murmured, feeling a profound responsibility towards Lillian Yanes and all of Dragonsland. Chapter 739, Elliot drove directly to the port. Half an hour later, they arrived. As they approached, Elliot slammed on the brakes suddenly. Kiran's body jolted, and he opened his eyes to look ahead. Flashing police lights filled the scene ahead, and numerous officers blocked their path. "Young Master Kiran, I'll drive through them in a moment. You'll need to make a dash for it. Get on speedboat 009, and the crew will escort you out of here." "A speedboat?" Kiran asked. "We've arranged for a vessel to meet you in Dragonsland's waters. Once the speedboat reaches our maritime border, they'll ensure your safe return." Kiran looked at Elliot, aware of the grim fate awaiting him. "Tell Sect Leader Yanes that we of Foxgate and Sunland haven't disgraced her. We've always remembered our mission." Determination shone in Elliot's eyes. Kiran didn't speak further, just patted Elliot on the shoulder reassuringly. "Take care." Kiran nodded, heavy-hearted about Elliot's fate, but resolved that a man must do what he had to survive to avenge Elliot and the others. At that moment, police began approaching. The sirens wailed. Elliot floored the accelerator, charging towards the police as Kiran grabbed onto the car door. The vehicle's speed increased rapidly, Elliot's eyes filled with fierce resolve. "Get ready, young Master Kiran," Elliot urged, speeding up even more. "Brother," Kiran said, then swung open the car door and leaped out like an arrow from a bow. Tears streamed down Elliot's face. Though he couldn't return home, he felt fortunate to have witnessed the return of the Imperial Dragon sword and to have fought alongside Kiran. His mission was complete. With a thunderous crash, Elliot's car collided with the blockade, causing massive chaos. Amidst the smoke and chaos, Kiran successfully boarded the 009 speedboat. The crew inside, recognizing Kiran, saluted him respectfully. "Young Master Kiran, let's go," Kiran said, not looking back at the turmoil at the port, his eyes moist. The backbone of a nation was always its unsung heroes. The speedboat set off towards the azure horizon. Kiran, filled with a mix of emotions, was determined to strengthen himself and the economic power of Dragonsland to ensure that investment groups fell into decline. Okajima was deeply frustrated after storming out of the Chamber of Commerce angrily and finding no sign of Kiran. Upon receiving news of a car crash and the ensuing chaos at the Eastern Harbor, his anger boiled over. "Damn it, Kiran must have escaped from there," he cursed, urgently contacting the authorities to ensure Kiran was killed at sea and the Imperial Dragon sword retrieved. Meanwhile, Florence Nash, informed by Chairman QJ about the injuries at the Trade Association, was furious. Learning about the disorder at Eastern Harbor, she immediately notified the authorities. Soon, all eyes were on the maritime area off the eastern coast. Kiran had become the focus of many, some wishing his death, others his protection. The speedboat's driver, navigating swiftly through the waters, soon noticed a change in his surroundings. "What's happening?" Kiran inquired as the driver reported multiple vessels converging on their position. "It seems they figured out our route and are trying to stop us," Kiran deduced. "Don't worry, young Master Kiran, I'll make sure we reach our territorial waters," the driver assured him, his voice firm. Reflecting on Elliot's sacrifice, Kiran felt a surge of anger and sorrow. He turned and looked back towards Sunland, vowing, "One day, I will annihilate all Sunland martial artists." If that day comes, Elliot and the others will rest easy, the driver said, visibly moved. What's your name? Kiran asked. Andre. I'll remember that. Andre, Kiran acknowledged, his tone solemn. Now, with the Imperial Dragon Sword within reach of Dragonsland, it wasn't just a matter of personal honor but a national duty. As they approached the neat array of ships blocking their path like a giant net set for them, Andre slowed down, his face etched with seriousness. Kiran saw the ships aim to block their escape by using ordinary vessels to form a barricade. If the speedboat continued, it would be capsized. How far are they now? Andre shouted into the radio. Less than 30 nautical miles, came the reply. Where are you exactly? In a disputed maritime area between two nations. Their warships have blocked us, and we can't get closer, the reply came back. A sense of despair washed over Andre. Kiran, hearing this, felt both furious and helpless. Wasn't the Imperial Dragon Sword rightfully Dragonsland's? Why was only Florence Nash, an ordinary person, stepping forward to defend it in Sunland? Gazing at the vast sea, knowing that even if he used all his strength, he could only make it halfway to the opposing vessels, Kiran realized the gravity of their situation. Young Master Kiran, there's no other way now. I must try to break through. I'm not sure if I can get you to our support ship, Andre admitted, his expression filled with regret. Let's go, Kiran said, standing firm beside Andre, his hand resting on the sword case. At that moment, Kiran was prepared to kill or be killed to protect the sword. Understanding Kiran's intent, Andre's determination hardened. He couldn't swerve. He had to drive straight through. He couldn't take any detours now to ensure the speedboat's fuel would last to get Kiran to the rendezvous point. With a fierce resolve, he exclaimed, "To hell with it," and pushed the throttle to its maximum, ready to face the opposing ships head-on. As they sped towards the enemy, the ships began to move slowly, tightening their net. Kiran suddenly stood firm on the speedboat, leaping up with the Imperial Dragon Sword drawn, slashing through the air like a fiery dragon unleashed. The seemingly calm sea erupted into waves, rocking the nearby boats. Seized the chance to break through, Kiran shouted. Andre spotted an opening as two ships began to close the gap. He maneuvered the speedboat through just in time. Kiran landed back on the deck, his energy spent but spirit undiminished. Looking back at the ships that had nearly trapped them, Andre was hit by a wave of disbelief mixed with exhilaration, and shouted, "Young Master Kiran is indeed the god of war." Kiran, catching his breath, remained silent. Chapter 740. Andre saw that Kiran's clothes soaked through not with water, but with blood. He knew Kiran had gone all out in that last strike, and his injuries were severe. Young Master Kiran. Andre's eyes were moist. Kiran gestured dismissively. "I'm fine. Focus on the task." Andre nodded vigorously, his face set with resolve as the speedboat raced towards the territorial waters of Dragonsland. At that moment, Okajima received a report that the first line of defense had failed. Damn it, he cursed furiously and quickly contacted the second line of defense. This second barrier consisted of Sunland's armed forces, a far cry from the simple boats used initially. Okajima was confident that Kiran could not escape their grasp. Meanwhile, Andre was driving the speedboat and communicating with their contacts. "We've broken through the first barrier and are heading your way. We're still being blocked. We can't break through," came the reply. "My fuel is running low. I can't take a detour. Can you manage a diversion to meet us?" Andre asked urgently. "We're being closely followed. It's impossible for us," they responded. "Try to draw them away. We'll make a run for Dragonsland's waters if we can," Andre proposed. "Understood," they agreed. Andre looked out over the vast ocean, feeling both hopeful and heavily burdened. Failure to break through would be disastrous. Kiran, adjusting his breathing, tightly bandaged his wounds. "We can't draw them away," the support vessel called out again. "They're not moving," Andre asked. "No, they've sent one ship away, but two are still blocking you," they explained. "Damn." "Understood," Andre cursed, frustration evident in his voice. He turned to Kiran. "Young Master Kiran, when we get close to their ships, you might have to jump into the sea and swim to our waters. It's our only chance now." Kiran, heart trembling slightly, recalled the resolute sacrifice of Elliot and understood what Andre meant. He looked out at the sea and the sky, his eyes filled with sadness. "Why must it be this way? We Dragonslanders value honor and integrity, Not like the shameless acts of Sunland, Andre said with grim fury. Young Master Kiran, don't grieve for us. Our lives were no longer our own from the day we joined Imperial Dragon. Well said. Kiran had no words of comfort. Our Fox Gate is perhaps the only part of Imperial Dragon that still remembers its original purpose. Thanks to Mistress Lillian Yanes, Andre added, his eyes slightly wet but resolute. Kiran remained silent, his respect for Lillian growing. Andre kept his eyes on the horizon. Prepare yourself, young Master Kiran. We're approaching them now. Ahead, the armed vessels of Sunland, bearing their national flags, blocked their path like a massive wall. Filled with somber pain, Kiran looked at the Imperial Dragon sword in his hand. Andre, I will build a sword shrine on Dragon's Mount to honor all the fallen heroes of Imperial Dragon. Thank you, young Master Kiran. Andre's tears fell freely. Our brothers below would rest easier knowing this. Kiran nodded solemnly, his silence a tribute to the unnamed heroes. Commanding the heavens, the path is bright. The dragon soars across the seas. Andre shouted defiantly at the approaching ships, pushing the speedboat's throttle to its maximum. The boat sped towards the barricade. Kiran gripped the Imperial Dragon sword, ready to leap into the water. The boat's engine spluttered and then stalled. It was out of fuel. Andre looked at the motionless speedboat, feeling the waves slapping against it, his mind in turmoil. Kiran, helpless, looked at the boat too. The two ships that had been blocking their path were now slowly advancing towards them. Both men shared the same thought: they might die with their mission unfulfilled, their aspirations drowned in their tears. This must be fate, Andre said with resigned anguish. Kiran was silent until he suddenly perked up, hearing a sound from above. Airplanes. Andre looked up to see a formation of airplanes circling above the ships that had halted their advance. Previously on a direct course towards them, the ships suddenly veered off. The two men were overjoyed, looking out at the endless sea ahead. On the water floated ships bearing the flag of Dragonsland. Though these ships did not approach, the men understood the reason behind this. Andre knelt, exclaiming joyously, our country has grown strong. Kiran's face also lit up with excitement, his sword seemingly resonating with the dragon's roar. Soon, the ship that was to pick them up approached and took them aboard, heading for Dragonsland. Hector, thank you. Andre hugged the person who received him and shed tears of excitement. Thank them, said Hector, pointing to the distant ships and planes overhead. Everyone understood that these were the true defenders of the nation, the enforcers of his dignity. Kiran held his emotions in check, looking to Hector. Was Elliot related to you? My brother, Hector said with tears, aware of his brother's fate. Your brothers saved my life, Kiran said gratefully. Young Master Kiran is too kind. You are our hero. Even our deaths could not repay your kindness, Hector responded. Thank you, young Master Kiran, the crowd echoed. Let's head back, Kiran said, looking towards his homeland. Hector nodded and personally steered the ship towards Dragonsland. All the way, they were escorted by planes and ships, a display of respect. However, there was no communication or signals. Kiran understood that Imperial Dragon was meant for the unnamed heroes, those destined to be forgotten. Yet, in times of national crisis, these were the ones a country relied on. Now, with the escort of planes and ships, it was perhaps the best tribute to these heroes. Heroes return, the nation remains secure, and the future of Dragonsland looks promising. Kiran felt a surge of pride and resolved to build the sword shrine on Dragon's Mount to ensure the nation would always remember those who silently guarded its safety. Turning back to look towards Sunland, Kiran's resolve to destroy the Martial Arts Association of Sunland hardened. After they were safely back, the planes and ships departed. Kiran and Hector discreetly went ashore, and then made their way back to the Baysville. Far away in Sunland, Florence Nash breathed a sigh of relief. Kiran returned quietly, but those who knew of his journey understood the trials behind their safe return. Kiran went straight to Neptune's Cove Karaoke. Lillian had heard of Kiran's return. The moment Kiran pushed open the doors of Neptune's Cove Karaoke, he was stunned.